together with our grown children who now are raising their own children. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on was exactly this, values. And we posed to them three important questions. The first question we posed to them was, what really matters to you? So this is a question all young people need to wrestle with. What really matters to us?
Hi everybody, welcome back to Movie Scenes and Great Books. I'm your host, Joy Victoria.
And I'm Christina Harris, your co-host.
And today, I am so incredibly honored to be introducing our guest. She is an incredible author, a businesswoman, a true woman of faith, and a family woman. We are here today joined by Mrs. Trudy Cathy White, and we're going to talk about her book, A Legacy That Lasts today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Miss Trudy, for coming.
What a joy to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation.
So firstly, we want to start off with a question about your parents.
Yeah, because you can't talk about legacy without going back to your roots. So a lot of people, of course, know your father, Mr. Truett, and you know he's been a huge blessing in our lives. But I first want to talk about your mom, Miss Jeannette, because I was so into this book, and then that's when I discovered that you wrote a book about your mom called A Quiet Strength. And it just reminded me, I've been married for 27 years, and I know how behind every great man is a great woman. Yeah. And so can you just tell us a little bit about your mother? And just maybe how you now can see what she poured into you, how you are like your mother.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for the honor to be able to share about her. My dad passed away when he was 93 years old in 2014. And just 10 months later, my mom passed away at the age of 92. And so we felt like that we were just so blessed to have our parents around for that long. But I'm the only daughter in the family and live very close to the homestead. And so my mother and dad lived in the same home for 56 of their 66 years of marriage. And anytime you live in the same house for that long, you know what happens. You gather a lot of stuff. And so I remind people that when my mom and dad passed away, they didn't take anything with them. They left everything that they had. And as the daughter, I had the responsibility to kind of go through the home and clean through things. And I would find things that make me cry because they brought back memories of things that we had done together. And then I'd find some things that would make me laugh because I wonder, why in the world did my mother keep these things all this time, So things that were kind of puzzling to me. But after I had cleaned through the whole house, I realized that the thing of most value that both my mom and dad left for us as a family and as a family business was actually their legacy. And our legacy is actually the life we're living right now. So that kind of got me focused on this idea how important it is that we're intentional about how we're living our legacy. And my mom has been that quiet strength all these years in our life. I remind people that for everything that is seen, it is the result of the unseen. Just the basic things like a tree. You look at a tree and you see it grow and strong, but you can't see the roots. And without those roots, that tree would not be healthy and growing like it is. And so I kind of look at our family and our family business, and I say, my mom was the unseen person. So all these years in our family, that's why I wrote this story about her, this book about her. I feel like people need to know her story. I didn't write it until she had passed away, but it's just based on a verse in Isaiah that says, in quietness and in trust will be your strength. And that is really where my mom's strength came from, because she knew how to be still before the Lord. She knew what it meant to trust in the Lord, and she transferred and demonstrated all of that for us, our family, as we were growing up. So it was great to be able to honor her with that particular book, and also for our family just to say, thank you, Mom, for the life that you've lived and the legacy you've left.
Sure, yeah. I can't wait to read that one next. You are a good writer.
Yeah, an amazing
writer. Me and my daughter.
Storyteller.
Yeah, we were reading the book at the same time, and we would come like, wow, she's a great storyteller.
Yeah.
And my daughter, so she's like her dad, because she has all of your dad's books. And yeah, so she
Oh, that's
would read
awesome.
them. And she would say, Mom, I'm like Miss Trudy because my brothers.
I have two older
Yeah.
brothers. I'm the youngest, the baby girl. So I know
Yeah.
just what it's like.
Yeah. And so how are you, do you think, most like your mother?
My mother, I always said she always had a positive attitude in life, even through difficulty. Now, for people that don't know, my mother's earthly father walked away when she was a baby in arms. So she never knew her earthly father all of her life. So he was not there to walk her down the aisle when she got married. He was not there to even introduce her own children to her father. But she would stand here today and tell this audience, she would say, but don't feel sorry for me because few years later, when my mom was about 5 years old, she discovered her heavenly father, and he became her perfect earthly father. And so much about my mom's walk with the Lord has allowed her to have such a positive attitude. And I think I got a little bit of that. I tend to be more on the positive side rather than the negative side. But my mother is also very determined, and I got an awful lot of that in me.
Good. I
Just
love
the
it.
determination to move forward, to tackle challenges, to do new things, and to explore and treat life as an adventure every day and live it to the full. So I would have to credit my mom for some of that.
Those are wonderful qualities,
Yeah.
and those are qualities that really make life sweet, aren't they?
Exactly right.
And what about your dad? What do you think you got from Mr. Truett from your dad?
My dad, I often tell people that um, the characteristics that stand out are really more like values that were important to my dad's life was that he was consistent in how he lived his life. When he started in the restaurant business, he was only 25 years old and he was single at the time. But he knew from the very first day that he opened his little restaurant that he wanted to serve quality food and create a place that people would enjoy coming to, almost like coming home to walk into someone's kitchen. So he wanted to create that kind of environment. But then when he invented Chick-fil-A and we began to expand across the country, it was important to him that no matter where you eat Chick-fil-A, whether you're in California or whether you're in Georgia, that you get that consistency and that kind of sandwich. And that really came out of the kind of life my dad lived. He wanted to be consistent in how he lived his life. He took biblical principles and applied them to good business practices. And that's how he lived out his life. And so as I got older, as a young adult, I began to really appreciate that in my dad's life, to see that no matter where he was, no matter who he was with, he was very consistent in his responses and his reactions and his service to others. And I've hoped I've grasped a little bit of that as well, that when people are with me, they say, Trudy's the same no matter who she's with or where she is.
That's good. That's good. I took a lot from this book, from things that your parents taught you,
Yes.
that I believe just made me better very quickly, understanding, those principles. And that one, when you go to Chick-fil-A, you can feel the experience is it's a premium experience. Everywhere you go, we've been to Chick-fil-A in different states, and it's very consistent. And of course, the phrase "my pleasure," it's always pleasant no matter how many times you hear it.
I'm glad you find that to be true. Enjoy with all your collection of my dad's book. He also has one that's called "How'd You Do It, Truett." Don't know if you've gotten your hands on that one or not. But a big part of that was helping people understand there's really no real secret to that what you're experiencing when you go to Chick-fil-A, because of the fact that we believe so much in biblical principles. We just transfer those over, and the Bible talks awful lot about how we treat other people, that we're to treat other people with honor and dignity and respect, and that we're to serve other people. Jesus himself said, no, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. So we try to take that mission of serving and caring for others to heart. And when you do that, people begin to, they recognize that as a part of our culture.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
And even close on Sundays, it blessed my husband. And it blessed me because having a small business, you can just work all the time. but he took that from your father, and he has been relaxed, being closed on Sundays, not answering the phones. And I know it benefited my children, just having that time with their dad. It makes a huge difference. So
Yes.
we appreciate that one too.
Yes, yes.
That's great. Yeah, for sure. Being closed on Sunday is a wonderful way to honor the Lord. And oftentimes, we think about the things that we do may be a real reflection of the Lord, but sometimes the things that we don't do, that we choose not to do, can also be a reflection and honoring to Him. So choosing to be closed on Sunday was something my dad did from the very first week that he was in restaurant business. Honestly, It wasn't much of a spiritual decision. He physically was so tired. It was a 24-hour operation, the restaurant was. And so by the time he got to the end of his first week, he was so exhausted, so tired. Him and his brother, who he was partnering with, decided that, let's just don't open the restaurant on Sunday. And as time went on, my dad would later look back and say it was probably one of the best business decisions he ever made. For the very things that you've mentioned. It allows us to honor the Lord. It gives us time with family. It allows us to take rest. And if we look at the creation in the book of Genesis in the Bible, it says that the Lord created for all these days, and then He stopped and took a rest on the Sabbath. And so we've learned that principle really works.
Yes. And Mrs. Trudy, what I like so much about this book is that it's all about values, and it's all about determining how you're going to live your life, what type of person you're going to be, and based on what principles. So when I was reading this book, I thought of my peers, college students, and people who are really just starting off their life and choosing who they want to be independent of their parents or just anyone around them. And from your perspective, I want to know how college students can define their values and stay consistent with living their life committed to those values.
Yeah, well, we've raised 4 children, and when they all moved out of the house and they're young adults, we decided we would love to get together with them one weekend out of the year. So every October, we get together with our grown children who now are raising their own children. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on was exactly this, values. And we posed to them 3 important questions. The first question we posed to them was, what really matters to you? So this is a question all young people need to wrestle with. What really matters to us in life? The second question was, what values govern how you make your decisions? Because we all have values, whether we've identified them or not. And we're all making decisions every day about things, whether it's relationships or activities, things that we've got to do. And so if we can understand what are the values that govern my saying yes or no to a particular thing. And then the third question we asked our children was, what values do you want other people to see in your life? Because oftentimes we think we could say something's important. Like I could tell you family's an important value to me in my life. But if you never see me with family, if I never talk about family, and so if you might wonder, is family really important to Trudy? So we have to make sure that the values that we want other people to see in our life are actually the values that we're living now. So what we did, and what I would challenge college students to do, is you can Google anywhere, you can find a whole host of values. Maybe grab you a list. We created little cards for our children to use. And so we've got a whole deck of about 100 values. And we asked them to sort through them. They make 3 different piles, a pile of very important to me, not so important to me, not important at all to me. And we asked them to take these values, maybe a list of 100 words, and narrow them down to about 5 or 6 that really rise to the top, that say, this really matters to me. And
That's
then
good.
then we pose a challenge to them. We pose to them to begin to talk about those values to each other, to their friends. Begin to talk about those. Probably write them down on a piece of paper, put them in front of you so that you can be reminded, okay, I've decided this is what's important to me in my life. And then, of course, one of the most important things is that you live those values out. So let them be a reminder, this is where our focus is going to be for life. And we found that to be extremely helpful in our own personal lives. It's been very helpful to our children and now they're parenting young children, and they're beginning to have these same kind of conversations with their own children, but it's never too young. We've done this exercise, or what we call a value exercise, with our teenage grandchildren. And they're already beginning to
Awesome.
think about what's important to them in life.
Yes, yes. I
Good.
love that. And it is a challenge because when you're talking about 50 plus values, they're all good things. So just like going through that process
Right.
of elimination, it just shows that you're putting in work to actually stick with what you're setting for yourself in terms of your values. So
Yeah, narrowing
that's
that
amazing.
down and
Yes.
knowing what
Yes.
exactly is important to
Yes.
you, what God helps you find what
Yeah.
God wants you to
Yeah.
do
Yes.
in
That's
life.
right.
Yeah.
And this is Trudy. So when you were 19 years old, you were operating your very own Chick-fil-A branch, which
Wow.
is an incredible feat for a 19-year-old woman. Like, talk about girl power.
Right.
So I want to hear from you, what values kept you grounded mentally, spiritually, and emotionally during that time with you were dealing with school and then operating a full on
Wow.
branch of a business. So what values kept you grounded during that time?
Well, let me get to those, but let me also kind of help you understand that I did not go to school during that time. I actually took a year out of school. So I had just finished my
Wow.
freshman year in college, and I had come home for the summer. My dad was looking for a Chick-fil-A operator in the Birmingham area, which is where I was living at the time. And he asked me if I had met anybody that would make a good operator. My dad was doing all the selection process.
Yeah.
And I told him no, but I volunteered. I said, I can help you, Dad, if you really need somebody. And so it was a really quick decision. I think looking back on it, I thought, I'm not sure I knew what I was doing at 19. And then I
Yeah.
also questioned the wisdom of my parents. I'm not sure they knew what they were doing when they turned the restaurant over to me when I was 19. But one of the characteristics or qualities, I guess, of my mom and dad is oftentimes they believed in other people more than they actually even believed in themselves at times. So I think my mom and dad saw there was potential, that I had enough determination, that I had what was needed to maybe be a potential Chick-fil-A operator. And I'd grown up in the business, so surely I
Yeah.
could do this.
So he was
So I
confident. I was gonna say, what
think,
was his response? Was he like, or was he
yeah, he
already
said,
knew you could do it?
yeah, he said, would you really want to do this? And I said, sure, I would. And Dad said, well, here, let's set a few boundaries. One is that you'll have to drop out of school to be a Chick-fil-A operator. It's a full-time job. There's no way you could
Yeah.
juggle on both. But he
Yeah.
said, you could only have the restaurant for a year because I want you to go back to school and finish your degree. I think they were afraid that maybe I would never finish my
Yeah.
education if I
Yeah.
Of
didn't.
course. Yeah.
And then I would have to go through training just like all of our Chick-fil-A operators. So those were basically the rules. Oh, the one most important was I couldn't call him crying if I had problems in the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
So that was a stinger there. So but no
Yeah.
special favors were shown to me, even though I was Truett Cathy's daughter. But I opened at 19, and you asked what were the values, what were the things that were foundational, I guess, really to my time there. And so much of it is what I had learned growing up and what I understand. One of the things is that God owns everything. So God owns it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So as I approached
Yes.
this opportunity of running a business, I realized, God, this is yours. I'm merely a steward to manage what you've entrusted
Yeah.
to me. Any
Mm-hmm.
team members that you give me that come along and work side me, they belong to you. Customers that come in the store. So that was very
Yeah.
important to me to get that
Yeah.
straight from the beginning. It wasn't all about
Yeah.
me. It was about what the Lord was entrusting to me and how
Yeah.
could I steward it, really well. So that was
Yeah.
really important. The second is this idea of serving others. We think in the restaurant business, you're serving people all the time. And we have customers who are wonderful. We have other customers that are a challenge, and you
Yeah.
know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, but you have to serve them all
Mm-hmm.
with joy and with a smile. And so, learning how to navigate just the public and responding with people, how to build relationships. But what was key to me is that I realized I'm here to serve other people. I may have to mop the floor. I'm not beyond doing that. I
Yeah.
may have to be in the kitchen chopping up cabbage. Back in those days, we served coleslaw. They're just any number of things. Spilt Coke that falls off of the table when a mom is
Yeah.
with small children, that has to be cleaned up. And there's just so many ways that we're able to serve and do for others. And those were fundamental values that were important to me. And two values that I've adopted, John and myself, as a married couple, are generosity and gratitude. So one is just learning how to be generous. I was totally committed to this restaurant, and I learned what it meant to be generous with my time, with
Yeah.
people, what
Yeah.
it meant to be generous with my talent, the giftedness that God had given me, what it meant to be generous with my resources and to be generous with my influence. So I had an opportunity to impact a lot of people.
Yeah.
One of the team members that came that I hired actually is the one I'm married to. So
We heard.
Yes.
so
Yes.
the Lord gave me quite a blessing in that for sure. But
Yeah.
those are things that were important to me as I was serving. And last, I would say, I am a person that loves to be purpose driven. I don't like to do something if it doesn't have purpose or meaning behind it. And for our company, I let people in on a secret. I tell them we're really not in the chicken business; we're in the people business. So, so our corporate purpose, the reason we open our stores every day, is that we might glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us, and that we'll have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And so that was a drive for me and a motivation. I'm here to glorify the Lord. I'm here to have a positive influence and to steward well what he's given me. And those were foundational that helped me through that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's
And it was
incredible.
just such a great read. As you're talking, I could just see when your dad said, "Don't call me crying," what you guys do for the grandkids at Camp Meepaw. And you tell them, "Don't complain." And that was cracking me up. Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
And I want to pivot right there, talking about so you're operating this restaurant yourself. You're 19 years old. Then someone walks in who you decide to hire, and that someone ends up being
we're going there.
Your husband, John. So not everyone meets their spouse through them working.
You would have never met
him.
Yeah.
And you and Mr. John have been married for over 45 years now?
We just celebrated our 47th anniversary.
Wow.
47.
Congratulations.
Yay.
47 years.
And you guys have beautiful children, beautiful grandchildren, and it just looks like just a blessing of goodness to be in that family and just what you guys have cultivated. So clearly you picked a spouse very well, and he did also. So I want to ask you, what advice would you give to other young people or just anybody about picking a spouse? How do you pick a good one?
That's a loaded question for sure, right?
It is.
When I was 13 years old, I was walking on the beach with my dad, and my dad turned to me and said, "Trudy, what kind of guy do you want to marry when you get older?" And I didn't have guys on my radar when I was 13 that much.
Yeah.
And I thought it just kind of came out of the blue, a question like that. And I said, "Dad, why would you ask such a question?" And he said, "Well, it's never too early for you to start thinking about this decision about marrying someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with." And so I would just encourage you to start thinking about what characteristics would you want. Maybe you want to jot them down on a piece of paper. And so I took him up on that challenge. So that initially came from my father. And I got a piece of paper, put it in my Bible. And at night when I would get in bed and have kind of my quiet time, I got out that piece of paper and I began to list the characteristics of the person I felt like I would be interested in. I didn't want to marry somebody that I wasn't interested in. And of course, right at the top of my list was, because I was a follower of Jesus Christ by that time in my life, I wanted to marry someone that equally was in sync with me spiritually in their walk or their faith. And then the list just kind of went on. And I had some goofy things on the list. Like I wanted him to be taller than me. I'm not very tall myself, but I thought I don't want to marry somebody shorter than I am. And then I had some more serious things on the list, but this was a work in progress for me until I graduated from high school. I kept that piece of paper in my Bible, and I would write things and scratch things off and add things on. And I had quite the list by the time I went off to college. And so when I went off to college, I did ask the Lord, I said, I know there's lots of guys around, but I just want to be obedient to you. And I know you don't have just maybe one guy picked out for me, but just make me sensitive to people who are around me and allow me to be faithful to the things that you've asked me, because it was easy sometimes to say, well, maybe I didn't really mean this because I put it on the piece of paper, and it would be easy to kind of go off course to the things that I felt like the Lord had really that asked me to focus in on. So yeah, who would have thought I would meet John in a restaurant, and there I was, his boss, and I was making out his work schedule, and I was nervous because he was meeting girls back in school because he was in school. And I thought, well, if I'm his boss, he doesn't have to be free on Friday night, so I will work him on Friday nights. So I had a lot to do.
Good move.
Yes,
It
it was very
worked.
yeah. And believe me, this day I still have that piece of paper. And again, that worked for me. And I think the most important thing is that you bring it to the Lord, and that you pray about this. And for John and myself, I will say that when we got married, it was a commitment for life. And we've been through ups and downs. We've had challenges in our marriage. We've had disagreements. We've just passed through some difficulties, but we've always come back. We said, there was a point when we knew we loved each other. We're going to work through this no matter what it takes. So we have been committed to being lifelong partners. And when our children came along, we were able to tell our children, look, mommy and daddy may not agree about this right now, but we want you to know we do love each other. We're committed to working through this. And so it set a tone for our marriage for all these years.
That's good advice.
I love that.
Yeah. I did that same. I prayed. I just asked God. I didn't know to write the list, but I did ask the Lord, pick my husband, Lord, because I don't know. Just pick my husband. Yeah. So God, He knows what He's doing. Yeah.
That's right.
Wonderful advice. So just shifting into our last question here, since we're talking about values and how that means something in our personal lives and even just the people we interact with. What would you say, as a woman who's been in business for a long time? You've seen just incredible business people clearly your whole life. So I want to know how much personal values integrate with business values, and do they always have to be synonymous with one another?
Well, let me start by sharing what are my 5 values that John and I have as a couple and as a family. There are 5. One is our Christian faith. It is our filter for our decision-making process, for sure. The next is our family. It's a tremendous value. They're a gift from the Lord, and we invest heavily into our family. The third is integrity, and that is that we will try to make the right decisions at the right time, no matter what anybody else is saying around us. I love that. Yeah. The fourth I mentioned is this idea of generosity, to be generous. And the last would be gratitude, that we would be people who have a heart of gratitude, that we're thankful for the things that we have. So those are our 5 values. Now, I don't think that those personal values ourselves have to be exactly the same as whatever business that we're in, but I do believe they have to be in alignment with our values. It would be very difficult to work in an environment that goes against maybe your values to a certain degree. So it's something we have to kind of watch very carefully. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if we want to be a leader worth following in life, there has to be alignment between what we say is important and what we actually do in life, in every aspect of our life. It's not just, it's important that we don't try to silo our personal life and our professional life. In fact, you just really can't do that if you want to have significant impact. Whoever you are at home is the person you need to be at work. And those values should show up no matter what kind of environment you're in or working in. You want to make sure that those values you're living them out, so that you are light in the darkness, maybe where you work.
Amen.
Perhaps you're in a culture where those values are shared by everyone else around you, and that just makes the culture that much stronger and that much easier. But also, Jesus said we're to go into the world, and we're to be salt, and we're to be light. And so live out those values wherever you go.
Wow, Mrs. Trudy, would you that's life-changing.
Beautiful.
And I hope that everyone watching this adopts this philosophy into their life. The world would be, a much better place. And thank you so much for just your wisdom you provide. Thank you for your heart, for being obedient and serving the Lord. It's an inspiration to me and just, I'm sure, everyone watching this. So thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've shared with us today.
Thank you, ladies. It's been a joy to be with you. Joy, I want to just encourage you. in your studies and in this podcast, that
Thank
it is
you.
influential to a lot of people. I admire you, and want to just encourage you to continue
Thank
on that. It sounds
you.
like mom has done a great job with you as well.
Oh,
And
thank
parenting
you.
never stops, even when they get older, right? So once a mom,
No,
always
it
a mom.
doesn't stop. And God is so good. And I love that about your book, too.
Yeah.
You continue,
Right.
you and your husband being involved in your children's life, their spouses, their grandchildren. And just like my husband came teaching me and the kids the principles of your father, now I'm telling my husband, babe, we should go on a family trip. And then when we have grandkids, we can go on it, so I really think those values and those having those things in place on your calendar, it makes stronger families. And of course, and I'm like you, I told my daughter sometimes, soul winning, I don't know, it's like God just put it in my heart. So I believe that the family and showing people that we can love one another, that God can make our marriages last, and that we can have strong families, it is a reflection of Christ, and that is the number one thing, whatever we do to reveal Christ.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching today's episode of Movie Scenes and Great Books. Make sure that you guys go get your own copy of A Legacy That Lasts, and you can practice these value exercises.
It will
for
bless
yourself.
you and your family's life.
And adopt this philosophy. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you
Bye.
for watching.